at the forefront of politics.
Our enemy is Trump. He is the enemy. We got to unite. If we're not a united party, we lose to Trump.
On the front lines of activism.
There's certain fights. If we don't engage, they win. This is a fundamental question of who we are.
And delivering your daily dose of comedy.
Donald Trump, when he had his physical, they had his blood pressure, and mine is higher than his. Oh. And the irony is mine is higher because of him.
From the blue wave.
We flipped enough seats to take control of the House. We control the House.
To 2020 and beyond. This is the Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress, Channel 127.
And welcome to the show, brothers and sisters. Monday, January 27th. I'm Dean Obeidallah, back in the New York studios and waiting to be your MBFF. That's what I do. Always thinking of how many more friends could I make, because I'm the neediest Muslim you'll ever meet, my friends. So the weekend was certainly noteworthy for good and bad and stunning and jaw-dropping things. And before we get into the politics, just want to touch on, and this is not political. I'm not going to make it political in any way, so no one get concerned. But I was, with the passing of Kobe Bryant, everyone knows Kobe. I know he was a basketball star, and I knew a little bit about his community activism. Not a lot. I mean, I live here in New York. But I was so touched by the outpouring of support and the comments about him from President Obama and others. And the Grammy Awards, they put together a quick tribute to him. And I guess what made it even more painful is that it wasn't just Kobe Bryant who died, but his 13-year-old daughter, Gianna, in the helicopter crash as well. And, it made me aware of some of Kobe's work, his inspirational work. If you went to his Twitter feed or saw articles about him, how he was there for the community. He was there not just for basketball, way beyond that. I mean, there's the Kobe and Vanessa Bryant Family Foundation. His wife's name is Vanessa, dedicated to improving the lives of youth and families in need. They raise money for scholarship for minority students. In 2011, they started a youth project for homeless kids in California. They donated over $1 million to the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture in downtown D.C. Kobe Bryant was a coach and a mentor, and basketball to him was about a way of life. And he wanted to share that with his daughter and others, and coached girls basketball, everything. There was no limit. And his Twitter feed was just read like a pep talk for people going after their dreams and their hopes. And I think President Obama had such a beautiful tweet when he wrote, "Kobe was a legend on the court and just getting started in what would have been just as meaningful a second act. To lose Gianna is even more heartbreaking to us as parents. Michelle and I send love and prayers to Vanessa and the entire Bryant family on an unthinkable day." So just wanted to note that at the top. I mean, just the way it struck people and moved so many people, it moved me. I didn't expect it. I mean, I knew Kobe. I'm not a huge basketball fan, but of course I know who he is and transcend basketball. But his work off the court is certainly remarkable as well. So we go from a sad story to a jaw-dropping story, a story that is now dominating the headlines and changing the trajectory of the Trump trial if the Republicans are honest. And we all learned last night, New York Times reporting, John Bolton in his upcoming book wrote that in August, when he was still working for Trump as national security advisor a short time before he left, he spoke to Donald Trump about the Ukrainian military aid of nearly $400 million. And he was told that the freeze is continuing until Ukrainian officials help with the investigation into Joe Biden, into the Bidens. And this was so stunning. I want to play for you a couple of people who are not opinion people on air to give you a sense of why this is so important from a substantive point of view, but also how this is an earthquake in terms of this case. First, here's Jonathan Karl, who's as straight down the middle as you can get from ABC with George Stephanopoulos this morning, talking about why this new evidence means so much. Clip number 1, please.
One of the president's counsel said there were 6 key facts, and 2 of those facts said that the 2 people the president talked to about it said that he has said explicitly there was no quid pro quo, and that the Democrats had not come forward with any single person who had been told about this conditioning. This blows that out of the water.
It completely blows it out of the water. Now, when they make their case on the floor, they say the evidence shows. Obviously, nothing from Bolton has been submitted as evidence, at least not yet. But this is directly contradictory to a central point of defense.
And that's absolutely true, that the defense of the Trump world, and it doesn't matter, they'll move the goalpost. They have the luxury, the Trump lawyers, of being before a rigged trial. I tried some cases. You never knew how the jury was going to respond because it wasn't a rigged trial. It was a real trial. It was a search for the truth. These guys can ignore things. I mean, the first few hours, they literally ignored John Bolton. They're not going to talk about it. If this was not a rigged trial, I can assure you the first thing they would have talked about is John Bolton. But since they know the fix is in, they don't have to. And that's why I keep saying use any term you want. Rigged, farce, TV show, spectacle. Please don't use the word trial to define what we're watching, because if it was a trial, the very first thing Trump lawyers would have talked about and addressed is that. And they did not, because they don't feel like they need to. And so next thing was Chris Wallace on Fox News this morning giving you a sense in 30 seconds why this was so earth-shattering to Trump world based on what he's watching of Trump world. I think it's kind of humorous. Clip number 2.
What do you think about this very big news that came out last night?
If you want a sense of how big the news is that we've heard in the last 12 hours, 14 hours, just listen to the Trump supporters, frankly, like Congressman Lee Zeldin and a lot of others, spitting like crazy that it isn't big news, and you get a sense that this is really an important development in this case.
The more the spinning, the more that's absolutely true. In fact, the Trump world, many of them on Fox News, Lou Dobbs, Dan Benigno, you've got Rudy Giuliani and others slamming John Bolton on Twitter today, calling him all sorts of names. Now they all hate him. They used to love him. But that's the world of Trump. You're our buddy until you do something slightly that shows disloyalty to Trump. If you do not show 100% loyalty to the supreme leader, they will do everything they can to destroy your reputation and your credibility. And Trump has these media allies that'll do it. Now, the question is, will this change the trajectory about calling witnesses or not? Chris Wallace thought very much so. There was breaking news just now. Literally, I looked up on the screen on MS, but I'm only reading off the banner on the screen. The Republican senators have now proposed a witness deal, according to the Washington Post. I don't know the details of it. In the next break, I will go through it. Literally just happened now. I'm going to speculate here. The witness deal is the idea of John Bolton for Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden is completely irrelevant to this, but that's what they're going to try to do to put pressure on the Democrats. Look, Donald Trump should be called as a witness. I don't know why the Democrats don't raise that. There's no Fifth Amendment protection against calling him. This is not a criminal trial. He can be called. 51 votes. Donald Trump knows more about this than anybody. And people go like, he'll just lie. Well, first of all, if he just lies, that's a new crime. Second of all, for those concerned Trump will lie and get away with it, I will say this, and I'm not saying in any condescending way. I'm saying this is the truth. If you're saying that, is that you've simply not seen a really good lawyer cross-examine a witness. If Adam Schiff had 5 or 6 hours with Donald Trump, and it's just him, because he's doing the cross one-on-one with Trump, and yes, his lawyers can object, but there has to be a basis, with documents and going through Trump's lies, everyone will see how outrageous, and Trump will get a mess and befuddled and yell and scream. Will it be enough to move Trumpers? No, but people in the middle, I think they'll see exactly what Trump's about, if they don't know already. So it would be really effective. There is one weird wrinkle in all this, and it might be the reason the Republican senators have now proposed a witness deal, and I've not seen the article, is that the reporting was that the White House had John Bolton's book in advance. They had it since late December, not last, just a month ago. And for vetting, because there's classified information, national security information, he has to give it to the White House to vet it, and they can cut that out. They can't stop a book, but they can say you can't put this, or that in it. The Republican senators have been saying to sources, we've been blindsided. You had this? You knew John Bolton said that Trump told him directly, I'm withholding the aid to the Ukraine until they investigate Joe Biden? And you didn't tell us this? In fact, here's John Carlin Stephanopoulos talking about it. It's a weird wrinkle, but I was wondering if it would animate the senators to be more than outraged and blindsided. Would it push them to a deal? And maybe that's part of the reason for this deal, because they are so upset with the White House. And here's clip number 4 from earlier today.
The president says he hasn't seen the manuscript. In his tweet, he said the claims were false, but the White House has had this manuscript since December 30th.
Bolton wrote this book. He submitted the manuscript back in December for a standard security review. This is where anybody who has had access to classified information, who writes a book, submits the manuscript to make sure they haven't inadvertently included anything that was classified. So yes, they have had this manuscript, since December 30th, going over this review. Now, usually, George, that review is done by career professionals on the National Security Council, not necessarily by the political team. So what we don't know is if anybody on the president's team arguing his defense saw this before. If they did, it's really quite extraordinary, because the president's lawyers explicitly said on Saturday that there was no evidence that the president directed aid to Ukraine to be withheld for the purposes of these investigations.
And that's really interesting. When Midwin Charles will be on the next hour, and she's a practicing lawyer, we're going to talk about the actual lies by the Trump team during the trial on the floor of the Senate. And there's a rule of professional conduct that says that a lawyer must be honest. It's called candor before a tribunal. That's the actual rule. And you cannot lie of material fact before a tribunal. And this is a tribunal, even though it's not a real court, it's a tribunal. And I don't mean arguing the facts the best way for your client, or leaving out things that hurt your client, or even flip-flopping on legal issues. It has to be objective misrepresentations of fact. I've got to tell you, the Trump team, and it brings me no joy to say this because I actually wish they would be to a different standard than their client, has lied numerous times. It began Saturday, factcheck.org, others, actual lies. And I honestly believe at this point there have been so many lies. We heard another lie today by Jay Sekulow and Pat Cipollone. Those are the two who have done this the most. I think they should be investigated by the bar and potentially disciplined, suspended, or if they keep doing it, disbarred. And by the way, Trump can't save them. The bar associations run state by state. It's not federal. Donald Trump has no power to overturn or pardon someone for these offenses. He can only do things for federal laws, as we know. And as lawyers, you're officers of the court. You're held to a higher standard. I know people go like, well, lawyers are all liars anyway. Some might be, some might not be. But you do it in a tribunal, you do it in a courtroom, you're going to get suspended. And they've done it numerous times. And they should be suspended, or they should at least be investigated to make it clear to lawyers around the country watching, going, wow, these guys are lying. I could see all the fact checking, and there's no downside. You're not above the law because you're representing the president of the United States. Trump thinks he's above the law. His lawyers are not above the law. So I know it's a minor issue. We'll talk about it more in Midwin Charles because it really upsets me. Now, according to the New York Times reporting, and again, this is based on a manuscript that none of us have seen. The New York Times has. They're sharing what they've seen. It says over dozens of pages, John Bolton describes how the Ukraine affair unfolded over several months until he departed the White House in September. He talks about the president's private disparagement of the Ukrainians and talks about Mike Pompeo acknowledging privately there was no basis to claim by Rudy Giuliani that there was any kind of corruption in the Ukraine. And look, the question is, do you believe John Bolton? My standard for believing people is you look at the facts around them. You look at where they're saying it and why they're saying it and the timing of what they're saying it. If someone says something under oath, under the penalty of perjury, if they're lying, I give that a lot of credibility right out of its face because they can go to jail. Then when you have someone selling a book, like Bolton is, you go, well, there is a financial motivation here. So you look at other evidence. Has anyone testified under oath that's supporting essentially what John Bolton is saying? And it gives it more credibility. Now, I don't know John Bolton to be a liar or not. I know he's a neocon. And I don't agree with his policies on any level. I do not know anything about him personally. I don't know if he's known as a liar. I know he went to Yale Law School. He's a bright guy, clearly. Guy I disagree with, but certainly a very smart guy. It's hard pressed for me to think that he's absolutely lying. But again, Don't assume someone's telling the truth because they just say something. This is all part of critical thinking. Look at their motivation. So let's look at some of the other people who have spoken about the issue of Trump withholding aid to the Ukrainians unless they do what he wants to help his reelection. One of the key people is Fiona Hill. Fiona Hill, worked for John Bolton. Not an assistant, but worked for John Bolton. She testified under oath, under penalty of perjury, that there was a July 10th White House meeting. Ambassador Gordon Sondland was there. That's the guy who paid $1 million for the worst job in the world now. It's just destroyed him. Gordon Sondland was a Trump appointee, literally paid $1 million to Trump's inaugural his committee, and got this job. You had Ukrainian officials there and other Trump officials. Trump is not there. July 10th meeting goes on. She testifies, Fiona Hill testifies, that Sondland blurts out, quote, well, we have an agreement with the chief of staff, that's Mick Mulvaney, for a meeting if these investigations in the energy sector start. That's Burisma. And Ambassador Bolton immediately stiffens. And we all kind of looked up and thought, that was odd. And then Ambassador Bolton immediately stiffens and ends the meeting. That's her testimony. She goes on to say, in a following meeting the same day, Ambassador Sondland again referenced an agreement with Chief of Staff Mulvaney for a meeting with the Ukrainians if they were going to go forward with the investigations. And he specifically mentioned Burisma. Fiona Hill continues saying, Ambassador Sondland, in front of the Ukrainians, as I came in, was talking about how we had an agreement with the Chief of Staff Mulvaney for this meeting. And so then she testifies under oath, it's all under oath, this is not selling a book, this is not on television, under oath, saying she goes and tells John Bolton immediately about what she just heard and what is transpiring. Bolton tells her, quote, this is under oath, and Bolton, quote, and he told me, referring to Bolton, he told me, and this is a direct quote from Ambassador Bolton, you go and tell Eisenberg, that's John Eisenberg, National Security Council lawyer, you go tell Eisenberg that I am not part of whatever drug deal Sondland and Mulvaney are cooking up on this, and you go tell him what you've heard and what I've said. So I went over to tell John Eisenberg about this. By the way, John Eisenberg seems like a really important person, right? Democrats subpoenaed him, didn't testify because Trump stopped him. The stonewalling and obstruction of Congress by Trump is something you've never seen. So you have Fiona Hill making it clear that John Bolton was very concerned in July. This drug deal is going on. And drug deal doesn't literally mean a drug deal. Something illicit is going on. Something so stunning that John Bolton tells Fiona Hill, go now to the National Security Council. What I'm interested in, and I would, as a human being and also as a lawyer, you would ask the questions to John Bolton, how many times have you told someone to go to National Security Council and tell them, the lawyer, and tell them something is illicit, something is wrong here, something potentially illegal is going on? And if he says never before, that makes it even more monumental. If he says he does it all every week, then it makes it less significant. I don't know the answer. I'm curious to find out the answer. Then we have someone else who backs up John Bolton. Now, this guy is not under oath. This guy's actually on bail. It's Lev Parnas. Is Lev Parnas telling the truth? I'm not sure, but things start to match up. John Bolton, at worst, is trying to sell books. But Fiona Hill gives it all the credibility in the world. Lev Parnas, remember over like a week or so ago, was on Rachel Maddow talking about what his job was on behalf of Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani with the Ukrainians. And let's play this to set up the foundation here for Lev Parnas saying Trump and Giuliani sent him and knew exactly what he was doing because he was not going to go out there and just talk to the Ukrainians without Donald Trump and Giuliani's introduction and helping his credibility. So here's clip number 5, please.
What do you think is the main inaccuracy or the main lie that's being told that you feel like you can correct?
That the president didn't know what was going on. President Trump knew exactly what was going on. He was aware of all of my movements. I wouldn't do anything without the consent of Rudy Giuliani or the president.
In terms of the president and what he has said about you, he said about you and Mr. Fruman, Igor Fruman, I don't know those gentlemen. I don't know about them. I don't know what they do. You're saying that was not a true statement from the president.
He lied.
And over the weekend, what backs up Lev Parnas even more, not pictures, but an audio recording that he released. It's 90 minutes long at a private dinner in April of 2018 at Trump Tower in a private room with a handful of donors who all pledged $1 million, folks, to the Trump super PAC because he's cleaning out the swamp, $1 million at a time. And they're having it there in 90 minutes. And there's Trump talking to Lev Parnas, and there's only a handful of people there. Donald Trump Jr. and others. There's numerous pictures of Trump with Parnas, but also, more importantly, Trump with Giuliani. They're buddies. So Trump knows who he is. There's no doubt about that. And then here is Parnas talking about what the investigation was about. Was it about corruption or was it about the Bidens? As John Bolton is saying now, it was just about the Bidens. Clip number 6.
When you say that the president knew about your movements and knew what you were doing, are you saying specifically, and I want to sort of drill down on that, that the president was aware that you and Mr. Giuliani were working on this effort in Ukraine to basically try to hurt Joe Biden's political career? He knew about that.
Yeah, well, it was all about Joe Biden, Hunter Biden. It was never about corruption. It was strictly about the Burisma, which included Hunter Biden and Joe Biden.
So there you've got that. That's backing up John Bolton's story. That John Bolton said very clear in his manuscript that, just reading right from the Times, Trump told his national security advisor John Bolton in August that he wanted to continue freezing $391 million in security assistance to the Ukraine until officials there help with the investigations into Democrats, including the Bidens. So you've got quid pro quo. You've got him talking about, here's Lev Parnas, one more clip. Point blank. Was there quid pro quo? Was it something for something? Or in layman's terms, was this bribery? Because that's what it is. Clip number 7.
Did you meet with a Ukrainian official named Sergei Schaefer?
Yes, I did.
Sergei Schaefer is a very senior aide to President Zelensky.
Correct.
It has been reported, as far as we understand from public reporting, that you conveyed to Mr. Schaefer the exact quid pro quo, that you wanted Zelensky to announce investigations into Joe Biden or military aid would not be released to Ukraine. Is that accurate?
It was a little bit more than that. Basically, the message that I gave Sergei Schaefer was a very harsh message that was told to me to give it to him in a very harsh way, not in a pleasant way.
Who told you to give it to him in a harsh way?
Mayor Giuliani Rudy told me after meeting at the president at the White House. He called me. The message was, it wasn't just military aid; it was all aid. Basically, the relationships would be sour, that we would stop giving him any kind of aid. Unless that there was an announcement made. Well, several things. There were several demands at that point. The most important one was the announcement of the Biden investigation.
Everything is about the Biden investigation. Everything's about investigating the Bidens to help Donald Trump. And if you had more doubts, is there more proof, more evidence? Did anyone else testify under oath there was a quid pro quo? Well, there was. Gordon Sondland, the man who Donald Trump appointed, the man who gave $1 million to Trump, testified under oath, point blank. Let's hear clip number 8, which backs up everything.
I know that members of this committee frequently frame these complicated issues in the form of a simple question. Was there a quid pro quo? As I testified previously, with regard to the requested White House call and the White House meeting, the answer is yes. Mr. Giuliani conveyed to Secretary Perry, Ambassador Volker, and others that President Trump wanted a public statement from President Zelensky committing to investigations of Burisma and the 2016 election. Mr. Giuliani expressed those requests directly to the Ukrainians, and Mr. Giuliani also expressed those requests directly to us. We all understood that these prerequisites for the White House call and the White House meeting reflected President Trump's desires and requirements.
You cannot be more clear. Now you have people backing each other up, and that's how you make a case. It's not just one person, because one person could have credibility questions. You've got John Bolton assuming the manuscript is accurate. We're just assuming this for now. If he testifies under oath, penalty perjury, it's much more believable. You've got Gordon Sondland under oath, quid pro quo. There was no doubt about it. That's what Trump wanted. You have Fiona Hill saying John Bolton was so alarmed by what he was hearing about a deal that he told her, go to National Security Council lawyer John Eisenberg and tell him, I want no part of this drug deal. because this is bad and I don't want to go to jail for these guys. The last part I added, but that was the message. And Lev Parnas, slightly unsavory, but it backs up everything. You heard Gordon Sondland under oath. Rudy Giuliani told us to do this. Lev Parnas said, Rudy Giuliani told me to do this. When you put it all together, it's hard to believe anything else but the story as simple as this. Donald Trump wanted an investigation of Joe Biden to help his 2020 campaign. He wanted simply an announcement, doesn't have to be an investigation. And he was going to withhold military aid to do that. And certainly withhold a meeting at the White House. Just a short time ago, Pam Bondi, one of Trump's lawyers, making this big argument on TV in defense of Trump, saying, well, there are questions about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. And, you know, they can investigate that. That's why they withheld the aid. If they did withhold the aid, that kind of stuff. Here's the truth. What she also played was that in the State Department in 2016, they were talking about concerns about Hunter Biden working on this board. And there were concerns internally in the Obama administration, apparently. So when Trump took over, he knew that. Pompeo knew that. Rex Tillerson, Secretary of State, they knew that in 2017, 2018. In fact, in 2017, the U.S. gave the Ukraine $446 million. 2018, we gave them $350 million. If the concern was fighting corruption, and they knew about Hunter Biden, they knew about Joe Biden, why didn't they ask about it in 2017? Why didn't they ask about it in 2018? Why did they wait until 2019 to ask about this investigation? Simple. It's very simple. Joe Biden was not running until April 2019. It's pretty straightforward stuff. Because Hunter Biden could have really been, just assume he's the biggest criminal. His dad fired a prosecutor in front of everyone to help his son. Well, that's pretty in-your-face corruption. So why did Trump give money in 2017 of $450 million? Why in 2018? Why didn't that rank corruption matter then? Why did Trump give it a pass? Because Joe Biden wasn't running then. And I'm not saying Joe Biden or Hunter Biden did anything wrong. I'm just saying, assuming in this crazy scenario they put out there. This is the world. I mean, to me, it's very clear. Article 1 of impeachment, to me, has been proven. It says, using the powers of his high office, President Trump solicited the interference of a foreign government, Ukraine, in the 2020 United States presidential election. He did so through a scheme or course of conduct that included soliciting the government of Ukraine to publicly announce investigations that would benefit his reelection, harm the election prospects of a political opponent, and influence the 2020 United States presidential election to his advantage. It continues on. President Trump also sought to pressure the government of Ukraine to take these steps by conditioning official United States government acts of significant value to Ukraine on its public announcement of its investigations. President Trump engaged in this scheme or course of conduct for corrupt purposes in pursuit of personal political benefit. In doing so, President Trump used the powers of the presidency in a manner that compromised the national security of the United States and undermined the integrity of the United States democratic process. That's what Trump did. You have John Bolton, assuming that's true, backing that up with direct evidence that he was told directly. You have Fiona Hill supporting that by saying Bolton, what he heard was so alarming, he should go to the lawyers. You had Gordon Sondland under oath saying quid pro quo and no investigation. We're not doing anything. Lev Parnas backing that up, not under oath, backing that up. I was told by Rudy to give them a message. No investigation of the Bidens, no aid, nothing. That's what Trump did. There's no doubt. Of course, the question is, does this move any Republicans to want to vote to remove him? I don't think he'll get 20, but this is stunning. If they do not have witnesses, and part of me, deep down, part of me wants no witnesses. Let the Republicans do a complete cover-up in the face of America. 70% of Americans saying, poll after poll, they want witnesses. Let them say no with John Bolton and everyone seeing these headlines. Just show that the fix is in, that it's a rigged system. This is a farce. This is Joseph Stalin's Soviet Union's show trial. Do that. Because a few witnesses might give this the semblance of a trial, and it's not a trial. Still not a trial. I don't care if you have 5 witnesses. It's not a trial because the jury is rigged. But with that aside, I hope the American people hear from these witnesses. I think it's important. And this could delay everything. because they can subpoena the witnesses. They might object. They go to court. It could put the trial on a continuance, just simply an adjournment for weeks at a time, and then they come back. But you got to get to the bottom of this. I think people need to know what's going on. You know, Richard Nixon famously said, the American people need to know if their president is a crook. Well, with Trump, we know he's a crook. The only question is, will he be held accountable for being a crook? So I'd love to hear from you. What do you make of Bolton? Will this move people in the middle? Forget will it remove Trumpers. I don't care what moves Trumpers. I honestly, I'm not being arrogant. I don't care. We don't need them. We're going to win without them. Will it move people in the middle? Do you think Republican senators will now come over and vote for witnesses? 866-997-4748. Give me a call. I'll be right back with you as my guest right to the top of the hour.
Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.